Testing, 1, 2, 3, testing. Welcome, survivors. This is Eerie Night of the Pseudoposse, and we are back in the 7 Days to Die 1.0 update doing some more experimentation. In our first update video, I tested out a bunch of block shapes and found a few favorites as a result. Go check out that video after this one, as it contains a ton of information on base building if you're interested. Anyways, in this video, we are going to focus specifically on one shape, the ramp 6m 03. It is steeper than the wedge narrow and seems to perform better with zombies on the wedge narrow slide dropping around 4 blocks and zombies on the ramp 603 around 2 blocks, which is half the distance. And for those who are familiar with the ramp 6 meter shapes, you'll very well know there are 6 of them in total, 01 to 06, with 01 being the narrowest and 06 being the thickest. The reason we are using the 03 shape is that zombies refuse to cross every other ramp variant. Ramp 6m 01 and 02 are too narrow, and zombies are absolutely resolute in not repeating the loop, not unlike a taco bear coming face to face with a ladder. Conversely, all ramps thicker than 03, those being 04, 05, and 06, have the opposite problem. They become too thick for zombies to run through, so they try to beat through it, or in the case of these clever ones, jump over it. With all that being said and done, what do we do with this information? Considering it doesn't take long for zombies to drop on the slide, again, they fall only after 2 block lengths, I am wondering how far we can go in creating a minimalist, incredibly small base that works on the hardest of difficulties the game has to offer. Let's find out. For the sake of experimentation, I'm going to create multiple setups with slight permutations. My intention for this design is for it to work pretty much anywhere and be built with very few materials, so we'll keep track of the number of blocks we use. Right now I am placing down the ramp 6m 03 shapes 4 blocks long, which is twice the zombie fall distance for these blocks. I'm not sure if during the horde having many zombies trying to use the slide at once will cause a traffic jam, allowing zombies to travel further than 2 blocks, but we're going to make a setup with different lengths to see what we can get away with. Speaking of getting away with stuff, I want to try and use the cube half blocks as our platform. The main concern is cop spit, and as I tested in Alpha 21, cops will spit at you even if their line of sight is completely obstructed if you use quote-unquote narrower blocks than the full cube shape. So I'll make this entire thing out of halves, and the next setup will use full cubes. We will however use the cube halves on top of the slide, as those are the perfect thickness to cover the ramp 6m 03 irrespective of the cop spit. This will prevent zombies from jumping over the slide. And what would be the 30-second block, we have a bit of a stability issue. Not to worry, we can better support the structure from the roof while also reducing the instances of zombies beating on the slide walls before they drop. May I introduce the ramp 6m 02 shape. We're going to rotate this such that the narrowest end of the block is opposite the slide to give zombies a gentle slope inward. Zombies tend to get stuck on corners, so eliminating those will make the zombies more likely to run straight through. With these blocks, I think we are up to 37 now, though Taco can double check that in editing. I hope I'm not an idiot. So back to where we were before the stability got in the way. Next, we'll need to block off the sides from cop spit. Early game, you wouldn't need this type of protection, but eventually cops will be a major problem, so we will definitely need it. Okay, with that block in place, we're up to 54 blocks, and 4 more for the front to protect against cops coming down the slide. I'll put down a half cube here for the roof, and to save on blocks, I'll replace these with full cubes, but it looks like stability is once again a problem, hence the additional blocks on the sides. So we can wrap up the roof, leaving a block open for our entry point, which brings our total count to 66 blocks. Our second test setup will be constructed in the same exact way with 2 major differences. The slide will be 3 blocks long versus the length of 4 from the previous setup, which will save us a total of 6 blocks. And the second major difference is that we will use full cubes instead of half blocks for the platform in which we will stand. One last thing I forgot to do for both setups is once we enter, how do we escape? I'll need to splurge on a couple of ladders, so let's knock out the shutters, putting 2 ladders for each setup. Naturally, this will raise our total block count by 2 for each one, which is a bit of a bummer, but hey, it does need to be functional. Alright, so it's finally test time. First things first, let's see how the slide part of it works. I want to spawn in a nice grouping to see if they all get congested, but it looks like they all seem to run straight through with no resistance. And depending on the POI size, how large it is, the layout, how many stories, it could really disperse the zombies that run down at any given moment. So probably larger is better, but I think for early game, a 1 to 3 story building is more than adequate. At this point, I am confident the slide works. Now how about them coppers? Unfortunately, it looks like he is winding up for a spin. Yeah, that's not ideal. Looks like the cube half blocks just won't cut it. And for the hell of it, let's replace all the half blocks with full cubes and try again. And if we bring in our buddy in blue once again, he just runs straight through without stopping to spit. Spawning in a bunch has no change. So looks like we have our answer there. On to the second setup. The slide is 1 block shorter, so let's see if that changes anything. As we already confirmed, the full cube blocks will prevent cop spit. No need to worry about that here. Let's get in a large group and start. Well, that looked incredibly well. It definitely appears the shorter slide has absolutely no effect. I'll try spawning even more, and no, it really doesn't seem to matter. Because of how effective that last test was, I really want to try out a slide length of 2 blocks. It'll save an additional 6 blocks. But the part that has me a little worried is how will it handle multiple zombies? The construction will otherwise be exactly the same, so let's just cut to the part where we have a bunch of zombies. A bunch of zombies fighting for the right to slide down. And wow, I'm a bit surprised. They just all went down, no problem. Didn't get stuck, didn't stop to beat on the slide walls, just constantly running through. Perfect. I think we will use that in the Horde. And to really test this out, I want to do a day 7000 Horde maximum game stage. I picked out a new POI for the Horde and we're going to set up shop 3 stories high, which will make the Horde harder as more stories will be easier. But I really want to put this through the ringer. Optionally, you could add spikes onto the roof if you're worried about birds. There definitely would not be nearly enough to tear through the concrete in a single horde, and since we aren't killing any zombies, birds may not even spawn in. That being said, I'll just add them for the hell of it. Let's get max level and set the time to day 7000 just before the horde starts. And now not much else to do but sit back, relax, and see if we collapse or not. That worked amazingly well, despite only being 3 stories up and only using concrete. We took a bit of damage with a couple blocks missing and some definite cracks in these blocks. The hit points are pretty low on some of these, but we managed to make it. I wonder if I destroyed all the near broken blocks if we still would have stood. Let's knock out all the damage blocks and see if it's stable. And it would appear so. One nice thing about reducing the length of the slide is that there is less mass to support. In the original test setup, we had to add a bunch of blocks on the roof for support. Some of those are probably redundant now. So what will it take to make this collapse? Wow, it's virtually being held up by the slide itself. We probably could have eliminated another 12 blocks or so from the grand total, those that provided extra support from the roof. But a promise is a promise, let's collapse it. And there it goes. Glorious. On second thought, it looks like the ramp 6 meter O2 shapes are more important than I thought for reducing zombie bashing. Without those, the zombies get stuck way more often, bashing on blocks till they are able to climb. so it doesn't look like you can save on the blocks after all. But wait! Plot twist! I've got one last way we can potentially reduce the number of some more blocks. In all the builds thus far, we've used 2 rows of the ramp 6-meter O3 shapes facing each other to form a double slide. However, zombies will path along just a single row. Or will they? Hey, why are you guys embarrassing me? What? After 10 minutes of head scratching, I destroyed the numbers because why not? They're 3 blocks high above the slide, mind you, so they're not in the direct path. Wow. That did it, huh? Anyways, back to our single row that totally does work. It does mean it will be a lot more fragile as we will have one less slide propping up our platform in the air. I'm going to construct the same platform as we've done multiple times with a minor modification. It collapses. The differences here are first, obviously, 1 slide. Second, no full cubes adjacent to the ramp 6-meter O2s on the side. And we'll run some pillar 0.05 meter shapes along the other side, which will help with stability. And since these shapes are not pathable, zombies will stick to the slide. Otherwise, everything else is exactly the same. And our total count for this iteration is a mere 45 blocks. Okay, first horde test. Same conditions. Day 7000, max game stage, insane nightmare, the whole shebang. And well, I noticed zombies were heavily clumping while turning around the blue ramp 6-meter O2 shapes, and were progressively beating on the red cube block over time. As the night progressed, cracks got worse, which led to this unfortunate situation right here. Because we have less support to the roof, we aren't free to take as many hits as we did back in the successful double slide horde run. Losing a couple blocks can cause a catastrophic collapse, so there is a little margin for error. What we need is to find a way to reduce or outright eliminate how much damage they cause to the supports. Perhaps the simple fact that when they approach the slide, they are coming from the wrong side, having to turn around it to run over it. So what if we put the slide on the opposite side, so that they don't have to turn around it? We'll otherwise keep everything the same, and thus our total block count is still 45. Could it be so simple? Turns out, nope. And actually, they were still clumping up. There are too many of them, and all it takes is one zombie to slow down and beat on the slide to cause a traffic jam. All of that is to say, it led to an inevitable conclusion, only somehow quicker than the previous test. As to not bore you with all the nitty-gritty details, I tested out a bunch of various ramps and wedges to deter them from beating on the wall, and instead just run down the slide like well-behaved zombies. I tested way too many blocks, more than what is shown here, until I found something interesting. Regular, old, cube, half-meter blocks. Apparently, that is the secret sauce. Okay, Taco, let's get this party started and see how this does. Make it or break it. That worked amazingly well. They barely touched the structure we built. Some minor cracks here and there, and actually they did more damage to the roof of the POI than to my base. Ain't that something? No matter, it's still pretty impressive you can cheese the Horde with such a few amount of blocks, which just goes to show how strong the Ramp 6 meter 03 shape really is. Well, I hope you all had as much fun watching as I did testing, and if so, bash that like button, consider subscribing if you haven't yet joined the posse. Don't forget to tap the bell to turn on notifications, so you won't miss the next video. And feel free to leave a comment as to what you'd like to see me test and or build in the future. Also, for those thinking this is too cheesy for their playstyle and want to fight the Horde, I hear ya. Our previous melee base video is probably more your speed, so give that a shot instead. Before I head on out, I'd like to give a special shout out to our wonderful Patreon members. Thank you all so much for your continued support. On that note, this is Eerie Knight signing off. See you all next time.